On the flight deck, listeners are manning up for the podcast launch. It's time for all unnecessary shows to clear the airwaves.
You're listening to the Hangar Bay, a podcast dedicated to the latest military flight simulation and hardware news. From developers to the community and everything in between, the Hangar Bay will get you squared away.
Welcome down to the Hangar Bay, your source for the latest news that every military flight simulation pilot can use. Today is Sunday, June 9th, 2024. I'm your host, Dumanji, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Hangar Bay. I hope each and every one of you have had a wonderful past month in the virtual skies, because that's right, we've been gone for what is almost 4 weeks now. I can't believe it's been that long. I had a wonderful trip. My family and I took a trip up to Scandinavia, so I got to see Norway, then come back through Scotland, and finally ended up in London. I think the best part was seeing Norway and seeing the Kola map in person, if you will. No, that said, it's a beautiful part of the world. We had a great time, but I did miss chatting with you fine folks each and every week about the latest and greatest in military flight simulation. So it's wonderful to be back in the recording studio this week, aka the living room, talking to you guys. And because of the lapse in time, or I should say the gap in time since I last was recording with you, we have a ton of news to cover. Of course, I would be gone at what feels like the busiest time in flight simulation feels like the last few years, really, when you consider how much news we've got to cram into a 4-week period. But rest assured, we got it all covered for you in this episode, which I think might end up being the longest episode I've recorded yet. So I guess with that said, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. That said, if you're new to the show or a regular listener, this is just your regular reminder that you can always follow along with this week's show notes on the hangarbaypod.com, or you can watch me scroll through them on the video version of this show, which is hosted on YouTube or on Spotify. That said, let's get things started like we do each and every week with the flyby. So the flyby is where we aim to cover the highlights from this week's news in 60 seconds or less. I should say this month's news in 60 seconds or less. Let's go ahead and get things started with patch 5.204 is coming to IL-2 Stormbird Great Battles in the next few weeks, which will raise the game's device button limit from 64 to 128, a personal favorite, and introduce the TA-152 collector plane. On the Falcon BMS front, update 4.37.4 was released, bringing a whole host of fixes and visual updates, which make the game look more beautiful than it ever has before. It's the power of 2 for DCS in recent weeks, with 2 patches delivering 2 new modules, the F4E Phantom from Heat Blur and the OH-58D Kiowa from Polychop, alongside 2 new campaigns for the F-18C. The wait for resolution between Eagle Dynamics and third-party developer RAZBAM continues, although refunds are now being offered for those who purchased the F-15E Strike Eagle through the DCS storefront. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. On the hardware front, Winwing unveiled a new budget product line with the release of the Ursa Minor Joystick, and early reviews are generally positive. The floor plan for the Flight Sim Expo was released earlier this week, with the show now just 2 weeks away. Plus, we've got a whole slew of developer, hardware, and community news that we've yet to cover that span the last month. So stick around, enjoy the biggest episode of the show yet. And let's get things started by transitioning away now and get over to the developer news portion of the show.
Hey everyone, Wags here.
In the developer news segment, we bring you the latest happenings from the game, developers, and related third parties. And man, do we have a slew of that this week. So starting things off, as I mentioned in the flyby, we have the IL-2 Stormbird Great Battle series. While we were away, they released 2 separate developer blogs, numbers 362 and number 363. First up, in number 362, they covered the Odessa map, and we've talked about that on the show before, but the big news in this dev blog from back on May 13th was the release of several screenshots for the Odessa map. So if you want to get a taste of what it's looking like, be sure to hop on over, check out developer blog number 362. I pulled 2 of the screenshots I thought were more appealing and put them in the show notes. And if you weren't familiar already, the Odessa map is going to cover obviously all of Odessa, as well as almost all of modern Moldova and small parts of Ukraine and Romania. And because of that, I should say the progress on the map is they're roughly halfway done at this point in time, but their plans are to cover more than 400 settlements and have at least 30 airfields once the map is released. So it should be lots of good stuff coming our way on the map standpoint. One topic that I previously mentioned on the show was that the IL-2 team was soliciting multiplayer footage as part of a contest. They were hoping to make a trailer of some multiplayer footage for the game, and if you submitted an entry, they'd give you a free collector plane. Well, they concluded that contest. They announced the winner, so congratulations to those of you with winning entries. But I did include a link to the multiplayer video that was created as well, that was featured in this developer blog. Really cool action shots from in-game, shows off what this game is really capable of, especially fun to see it in a multiplayer setting as well. So you can find that on the IL-2 Great Battles YouTube page, which is at IL2_Sturmovik. Also the link in the show notes. And then finally, they reiterated a request that I think we've talked about on the show before, that the team is requesting family photos. And what they mean by that is if you have some ancestors that fought in the war, in any of the aircraft or ground vehicles that are featured in the simulation, if you have some photos of the loved ones for those people, they're trying to put them into a family archives of sorts. And the idea is to have a photo that the pilot or the tanker would have placed in his own cockpit. So a photo of a girlfriend, a wife, a child, parents. And as reference, they give an example of a family photo they have for Squadron Leader Jack Collins in one of their Typhoon cockpits. And they mentioned that this was featured in Growling Sidewinder video, which tells more about the story of Squadron Leader Jack Collins. So if that is you, if you have a family member that served, you'd like to honor them by including a family photo, be sure to take advantage of this reach out request from the team. I think it's really kind of a cool, unique feature they're looking to add to the game and personalize a little bit of the history of some of these pieces of pieces of aircraft or tanks as well. So kind of a nice little feature that really is unique to the IL-2 team. All right, shifting over to the newer developer blog, which was number 363 on June 4th. This is where they talked about patch 5.204 being the release being imminent. They hint at 2 weeks, and I wasn't sure if that is the quote-unquote trademark 2 weeks or if they actually mean 2 weeks. Let's hope they do mean 2 weeks, because that'd be great. They say the patch will include the TA-152H1 collector plane, which we talked about on episode 6 of the Hangar Bay. That's going to be a late war German fighter. It is confirmed that that will be available in career mode, which will be beginning in March 1945. So you'll have at least a couple of weeks with which to enjoy that aircraft in a career mode if that's of interest to you. But the bigger change, or I should say the bigger update for me, is the maximum number of buttons supported by the game for a single hardware device will increase from 64 to 128. So those of you with Winwing throttles or VKB Stex throttles or Virpil throttles that have tons of buttons, or you got a button box with a whole host of gear on it, this is a huge quality of life improvement. So great to see the developers include that. Digging into the forum a little bit, I saw one community member did request that they make a change and up the 8 device limit that's currently in place. So I guess you can only have 8 pieces of hardware that the game will actually recognize in-game if you bound them all up. That limit is currently being evaluated by the team and is under consideration for modification per Luke FF on the forums. So if you're a big Simpit builder and you got a lot of devices in your cockpit, that might be something to keep an eye out for as well. But hey, 64 to 128 in terms of buttons is great. Also coming our way in this patch will be a host of bug fixes for career mode, and then a new combat sortie. This one I thought was really interesting. It's going to be an addition for the Axis on the Western Front, so for the Luftwaffe. This will be a specific mission type where you're going to essentially defend your own jets that are taking off and landing from any allied fighters that might be patrolling them. So imagine you're essentially flying a cap over the Messerschmitt 262s or AR 234s that are taking off and landing. To reflect the historical accuracy of how Allied fighters would try to engage those jets when they were slow going into land or immediately after takeoff before they could get up to speed. So really kind of cool to see the work the team over there and the IL-2 team's done to flesh out a lot of these mission types over the last few weeks and months. So this is another great addition, and I'm really excited to see it make its appearance in the game, hopefully again in 2 weeks. All right, continuing with things on the World War II front, we got an update from our team over at Scramble Battle of Britain. So as part of the Steam Next Fest, we're actually going to get a demo of Scramble Battle of Britain. This is the upcoming aerial combat strategy game. So that Steam Next Fest is going to take place and debut tomorrow, June 10th, and will run for exactly 1 week up to June 17th. So you got a week to jump in game and check out Scramble Battle of Britain for yourself. So what can you expect? Well, you're going to get an instant action skirmish generator, and then you'll have some single player missions featuring Spitfires, 109s, and then Stuka bombers. Not to be outdone in terms of seeing the game itself in action, we also have an updated flight school episode. So the team over there, John, the lead developer for Scramble Battle Britain, has been releasing these episodes every now and then, talking a little bit about the work going on behind the scenes to develop this game. So episode number 5 comes to us and talks about maneuvering and aerobatics. And in the text of the video on the YouTube page, I thought was really, really interesting was they talk about kind of how they're breaking up the in-game, I should say, how these turns are being broken up in terms of simulating the actual dogfight maneuvers themselves. So each turn is essentially going to last about 2.5 seconds. And they make a note to say that in World War II aircraft, this converts to roughly of a quarter of a loop or a third of a roll. So essentially, as a player, you're going to chain these maneuvers together to form your dogfight patterns or your maneuvers itself. So the goal here is for these dogfights that resemble real life engagements. So what's possible when you chain these 2.5 second maneuvers together? Well, the quote is, if you're thinking 3 moves ahead, the player can then execute something like a quarter loop followed by a vertical climb with a rudder turn to hammer their guns into an unsuspecting aircraft. So even though this is a turn-based game, if you will, what they're implementing makes it sound like it's going to feel really natural, and I just can't wait to see it in action. So, again, this is a game we've covered before on the show, not your traditional military flight simulator, if you will, where you're actually in the cockpit. I just think this is a lot of appeal for those of us who are fans of the military flight simulation genre, and it reaches out and provides a nice opportunity to do something if you don't want to hop in a cockpit for night and you want to do something slightly different. So can't wait to see this game in action. It looks like it's developing nicely, and be sure to check it out on Steam if you're interested. Again, that's Scramble Battle of Britain demo releasing tomorrow. All right, moving up to the modern world, we got Falcon BMS update 4.37.4 is here. So we previously covered this in detail on episode 12 of the show back in April. But I got all the links in the show notes for you on the new update for Falcon BMS, where you can download it, the official changelog, there's updated manuals, lots of stuff. Now, the biggest additions, if you missed that episode, are we have Link implementation for the F-16 now. And on the visual front, which I think is going to be a big win for a lot of people who've maybe been turned off by Falcon BMS over the years because it's old, the graphics aren't up to date. Well, they've introduced physically based rendering, or PBR, and man, oh man, does this game look pretty now. So now this is focused on the models themselves. So specifically, I'm talking about the aircraft textures. So we have the F-16 and the F-15C looking better than they ever had before. We've got updated cockpits, and then there's been model updates across the board. To go along with that, we have OpenXR implementation. So for you VR players out there, that's a big win. There's been a ton of updates on the F-15C front. So again, even though this has been traditionally a Falcon F-16 specific game, they do have a full fidelity F-15C in game now. And we've talked about that before on the show, but if you're new, something to check out. And then there's, to go along with the F-16 Link implementation, there's been a dedicated training mission as well as about 30 pages of content in the manual to go along with that. So tons of new stuff to check out here. The game's looking great. In the show notes, I got a trailer link for you. And then touching on the visual aspect as well, I want to highlight the YouTube channel Sim Gaming Life. So that's at Sim Gaming Life 4392. He's got a beautiful video where he highlights just how great Falcon BMS is looking these days with the new changes. And then over on the F-15C front, I want to give a shout out to the YouTube channel Dusty. So that's at _Dusty_. This individual covers a lot of the changes that are taking place with the F-15C in this latest update. So if you're someone who's maybe looking to jump into Falcon BMS and want to try out the F-15, this is a great video to get your hands on to understand what's changed and what new things you have to look forward to. So a great time if you're a Falcon BMS player. So if you're new or a returning veteran, jump on in and check out all the good stuff that awaits you there. Okay, shifting over to the DCS front, man, we got a lot of DCS stuff to cover. Turns out the month of May was not a good month to miss. I'm behind the power curve a little bit. So I'm sure most of you know by now, if you're a DCS player, that both the F4E Phantom and the OH-58D Kiowa have been released at this time. So the F4E is available now for $79.99 on the official store on Steam. And the Kiowa, gosh, man, I cannot say that for the life of me. I apologize for like the next 10 weeks because it's just going to keep happening, everybody. That is available for $70. So now the unique thing about the Kiowa is there was no early access period. This thing released, full release right out the board. So full price, no opportunity to jump in at a cheaper price point. But the great thing is early reviews on both these aircraft are very, very positive. So I got my hands on the Phantom. I've only spent about an hour with it so far. I've loved everything I've seen. I mean, as much as you can see in an hour, and it's only a matter of time before I jump into the Kiowa as well. But both aircraft, from what I've seen online, look really, really good. What about you though? If you're listening and you got a strong opinion on the aircraft, you have some thoughts, let me know. Reach out to the show. I'd love to hear from you and see what you think about both these new aircraft. So, normally we're only getting 1 to 2 aircraft a year. So getting 2 in a matter of a month with a third on the way in terms of the Chinook coming our way at the end of this month. It's, man, Maljewel lover's paradise. There's a lot to dig into. So moving over to the patch side of the house now for DCS, while I was away, we had 2 updates coming our way. So the first was associated with the release of the F4, and then the second was associated release with the OH-58. But in addition to those aircraft, we had a ton of other changes coming our way. So before I dig in, I just want to give a shout out to Bogey Dope over on YouTube. That's at Bogey Dope. He's got a fantastic feature overview of the patch that was released alongside the F4 Phantom. So this would have been about 2 to 3 weeks ago. So he does a great job of these update videos on some of the larger updates where he actually digs in and kind of walks you through change by change what these look like in game. So if you're someone who maybe doesn't get a chance to fly a lot or just generally curious about what some of the new updates look like, he's a great channel to keep an eye on in addition to his other wonderful content. But just want to shout him out at the top here. So if you're interested in what some of these features actually look like. That said, if you missed some of these updates or didn't read the change log, in that earlier update with the Phantom, we got some new bomb fuse options for several of the modern aircraft. So you can adjust a lot of various settings, which including fusing types, arming, delays, airburst altitudes, the PRF codes. Anyway, there's tons to this system, and Wags, Daddy Wags is back with a great video walking us through this new system. Got a link to Matt Wagner's video in the show notes as well. And then we also got updated pilot models for the F-16C and the F-18C. And Eagle Dynamics has stated that they do have a model in progress for the A-10C fans out there that's planned for sometime in the future. So if you're someone that likes to fly with the pilot model on, it looks fantastic. And I think you'll really be happy, or you probably are already happy because you're probably flying it with it right now. On the Apache front, there were some added features recently for the AH-64D, which include the fire control radar zoom and C-scope functions, and then link functionality for the fire control radar and the TADS. Wags is back with another video that walks through that, and you can find it in the show notes as well if you're a fan of the Apache and are curious about what changed there. And then finally, this is an addition that I was not expecting in the show and the patch notes, which I think is fantastic, and that's the addition of the Masson Asset Pack developed by Patricio Masson, which is at Masson92, Massun 92. So this was previously mod that's now been incorporated into the base game. And man, let's see more of this moving forward, please. I understand there's probably a lot of technicalities that go into this in terms of getting support from community members who commit to maintaining this, or there has to be some sense of commitment on Eagle Dynamics' part to keep these assets up to date. But this kind of stuff is fantastic, and I really hope Eagle Dynamics leans into this, takes advantage of the great work a lot of community members are doing to improve the base game. And if there's any way possible to continue doing this, I hope we see it. So early returns are that this is a fantastic asset pack. In fact, Aaron Mendoza over at Skyward FM utilized this asset pack as the basis for a new entry in their Mission Editor series to make better land bases. So we featured this, I believe, on a previous episode, but this is an article that continues the long-running series they've got. I think this is like article number 5, maybe, about DCS World Mission Editor and basically how to do a better job utilizing the Mission Editor. This article is focused on enhanced land bases And the general point is to suggest methods to use the extended roster of assets from this asset pack to make worthwhile locations in multiplayer missions that can become the center of the online experience. So having checked out this article, it's incredibly detailed. So if you're someone out there who likes to make missions, or you're interested in making your own FARP for single or multiplayer missions, be sure to check this out. That's again at Skyward FM. The show notes are the link is in the show notes. Go check out what Aaron had to write up, and it's a great article featuring this asset pack. All right, continuing on in the patch notes, we had some updates to the G warm-up functionality. You might remember in a previous episode, we talked about when this was introduced. It was kind of an interesting feature, but then there's some concerns about, okay, well, how's this going to work if you're doing a hot start, or if you start the aircraft already in the air? Well, Eagle Dynamics heard our concerns, and they've added a new functionality. So if you change the gameplay settings in the G warm-up option, if you enable this feature, you can set it so that the aircraft have already performed a G warm-up if the mission starts in the air. If the mission starts on the ground, like you're on the ramp, it's a hot start, or you're just a cold start, no matter where you are on the ground, the player will still have to perform a G warm-up maneuver. So if you're someone who would like to have that already enabled for you when you start a mission in the air, just go check your gameplay settings, and you should be able to find that there. In addition to that, there was your typical slew of bug fixes, aircraft-specific changes, campaign changes. One I did want to highlight was the addition of Reflected Simulations interactive checklists. Interactive checklists that we previously discussed on the show. And then I also want to give a shout out to Aviation Plus, YouTube content creator that we featured on the show before. He shined a light on the F-16C RWR bug, and we talked about it several weeks ago. And hey, that is now fixed. Lo and behold, in the patch notes, it says RWR displays radars in track mode in the inner missile launch ring. It is now fixed. So kudos to you, Aviation Plus, for shining a light on that, and kudos to you, Eagle Dynamics, for fixing that as well. All right, then we jump ahead to the OH-58 patch that was associated with the launch. That was just earlier here in the week, and there was a large list of F4E performance and bug fixes. So if you're a Phantom driver, it looks like Kneeboard is still strongly performing post-launch here, continuing to deliver a lot of performance updates and bug fixes. That's great to see. And there was a bunch of other aircraft-specific and campaign bug fixes, but the major thing this week was really just the release of the OH-58D. So a lot's changed in the last month in DCS, and I suspect we'll continue to have some more as we can anticipate the release of Afghanistan and the CH-47 here within just the next few weeks. But continuing on the DCS front, the addition of the news also came with the announcements that there's been 2 new campaigns released for the game as well. So the first of those is for the F-18C. It's called Operation Green Line, developed by Badger 633. So if you aren't familiar with his previous work, he's created the Serpent's Head 2, Rise of the Persian Lion, and Rise of the Persian Lion 2 campaigns that are already available for sale on the DCS store or on Steam. And you can find the newest edition in his lineup, Operation Green Line, at the same places today. So the launch price for this campaign is $12 US. The requirements are the Supercarrier and the Syria map. And this campaign is going to be based on fictitious events that follow on from previous exploits of the Rise of the Persian Lion 2 campaign. So even though the storyline does continue that campaign, if you were a fan of that one, this campaign can be fully enjoyed as a standalone experience. So this will place you in operations in and around the Cyprus area, but then events will transpire that will soon take you to Turkey, Syria, Israel, and Jordan, testing both your flying accuracy and strike capabilities in the F-18. So that means there's going to be 12 missions in total, both carrier and land-based ops. And the one thing I want to highlight that I thought was kind of interesting, as before, this campaign has been developed in VR, so there's no requirement to physically write down coordinates which break immersion. So for the VR fans out there, that might be something you'll enjoy. Also incorporates optional tanker refueling in some missions. And in addition to that, it's going to have over 1,700 voiceovers, as well as a speed stop feature, so nothing is missed if the pilot accelerates time. So that's kind of a cool addition there. So congratulations on the release of another campaign, Badger 633, and I hope everyone out there who's picked it up is enjoying it so far. The other F-18C campaign that was just released through the DCS store and also available on Steam is Operation Mountain Breeze by Sandman Simulations. So Sandman has previously created the F-14B Operation Sandworm and the F-18C Flaming Sunrise campaigns. So if you're a fan of those, you want to check this out as well. The launch price for this campaign is $14 US. And just like with Badger's campaign, this campaign will also be focused on the will also require, the supercarrier and the Syria map. This campaign is going to be focused on the Syrian civil war. So think around fall 2015 timeline. This campaign is going to require offer you a lot of diverse missions. So everything from dogfighting, close air support, seed and strike missions, and that'll be 15 missions in total with comprehensive mission briefings and again voice acting as well. So congratulations to you, Sandman, as well. I know putting these campaigns together is a tremendous amount of work, so probably feels great to have those released in the community enjoying those. All right, continuing on with DCS, we've got a topic I really don't enjoy talking about because it's really consumed the community as of late, and it's really, there's just nothing good that comes from this conversation. That said, Eagle Dynamics versus RAZBAM, the wait continues. So the ongoing dispute between RAZBAM and DCS continues. There have been no major updates despite my hopes over the last 4 weeks. And unfortunately, to some degree, this has started to impact the game. So a G-limiter bug cropped up in the Mirage 2000 because of one of the recent updates. Thankfully, it was fixed in the latest patch this week, even though it wasn't mentioned in the changelog. But I think the general fear from a lot of people is that this is going to become more common as patches continue with no official work on these modules from RAZBAM. So, where does this leave the player? I know a lot of people have been throwing around, are these modules abandoned? Do we ever expect these to be developed? I thought Shamrock from the Stormbirds.blog had a really interesting article, which I've linked to in the show notes, where he talks about these concerns. And then Enigma, Enigma Cold War, we featured his videos before on his YouTube channel, asked some interesting questions about, what not only what does this mean for Eagle Dynamics and DCS as a whole, but, the flight simulation community. So, I don't want to focus on a lot of, how do I want to say this? The more negative aspects of this conversation, because depending on where you go and who's talking about it, things get ugly pretty fast. So I highlighted these two because I just thought they asked really thought-provoking questions and handled it in a respectful manner, if you will. So well worth your time if you haven't checked out any of those pieces of content. That said, several members of the community are reacting in their own way, and it's starting to have an effect that I don't, I understand the contractual concerns from both RAZBAM and Eagle Dynamics, but it does put community members in an interesting place. So content creators such as Casmo, Deepak, and Spudknocker have all removed their F-15 tutorials from their channels this week. I've seen some squadrons on Twitter announce that they've removed RAZBAM aircraft from their lineup because they don't want new players to be encouraged to buy modules that may or may not receive support in the coming months or ever, potentially. Hoggett even took the step, the Hoggett subreddit took the step of pinning a public service announcement that now strongly recommends members exercise caution when considering the purchase of a RAZBAM module. So, opinions are flowing left and right. Community members are definitely making their thoughts known. I think the unfortunate thing with some of these decisions, and let me say, I totally respect the rights of these content creators to do whatever they want with their content. That's 100% their right. But while protecting new players, it does also have that double-edged sword of affecting players who've already purchased the module, right? If you're someone who's picked up the F-15E, you still want to enjoy it. It's really unfortunate that some of the best content out there for learning this aircraft is starting to be removed as well. So I guess I'll end by saying, where do we go from here? I wish I knew. I'm still holding out hope. I still have my RAZBAM modules. I still am excited about the F-15E, my beloved AVAP Harrier. So, I'm going to hope that rationality prevails and there is a solution at the end of this tunnel. That said, for some of you who feel differently, or specifically what I'm referencing is if you purchase the F-15E from the DCS store, so not from Steam, from Eagle Dynamics itself, and you would like a refund, per 9line on the official Eagle Dynamics Discord, they are currently offering refunds from the F-15E. They say, we would prefer you stick it out as we hope for a positive resolution, but if you can't or do not want to, you can request a store credit from your purchase. So you're being encouraged to go to the Eagle Dynamics, the official DCS store, submit a support ticket, and you can request to have store credit given back to your account in exchange for the F-15E module. So Big Nui chimed in, one of the community customer service liaisons over there on the same Discord, to say that Steam have their own refund system and we have no say in what can be refunded. So unfortunately, if you purchased it on Steam, you're kind of stuck with it for now. And if you purchase that in the Eagle Dynamics store, well, you've got it out now if you so wish. I'm just disappointed that we continue to have to address this issue, but that's where we are. And I think Shamrock had one final quote in his article that I want to reference from the Stormbirds.blog. And I think that's kind of where I find myself right now, is in lockstep with him, where he says, quote, "So while I remain optimistic in the long run, I'm not overly optimistic that we'll see something happen in the immediate future." I agree. So anyway, moving on, let's get to some brighter things that are happening, and some things we can look forward to, I should say. So the Sinai map is an update coming soon. So the Sinai developer OnRetech posted an update on May 24th to the official DCS forum stating, quote, "We apologize for our map update delay. This will be a good lesson for us in the future," end quote. Yep, I agree with that one. Yeah, so if you haven't been following this map, they, I think, have the unfortunate award for being the first DCS developer who did not manage to add a single line of text to the DCS changelog within the first year of having the product available on the market. So I didn't quite believe that when someone on the DCS forum mentioned that, but sure enough, I went back and looked. Since this map was released on June 9th, 2023, so over a year ago, the Sinai map has not had an official addition or changelog from OnRetech in the patch notes. So coming up on a year. So hopefully they've been saving a really good update, and it's coming our way. So they go on to add, "We're confident the update will be released soon, and we're working hard on it. We are preparing not just an update that will fix most of the bugs, but a massive map improvement that will provide more flying options and add new visual content." So they're teasing that there will be a lot of small improvements, unique airport and objects added, and then map optimization. So they mentioned a lot of things, and from what it sounds like, they were planning all these small updates that, and then every update resulted in more changes they had to make, and this is just culminated into a massive update. So they said that's why they decided to release phase 3, this massive update, I should say, all together at once. And hopefully that will be something we see here later this month, along with the updates that I previously mentioned, such as Afghanistan and the Chinook. That'd be great for everyone involved. Take OnRetech at their word that, there's been a lot of lessons learned, but man, yeah, I didn't realize it'd been over a year since the map came out. So if you're an owner of the Sinai map, hopefully lots to look forward to in the coming weeks there. Okay, other things we can look forward to coming to DCS, that is the F4E Phantom MiG Killers campaign, which has officially been announced by Reflected Simulations. So if you follow Reflected and the great campaigns he makes for DCS, he previously hinted at this campaign in his 2024 overview video, which he released back in January. But this campaign, MiG Killers for the F4E, will be a, quote, training campaign that takes inspiration from the initial Top Gun classes. So think circa 1969, Top Gun's coming online. That's what we're trying to replicate here, or I should say what Reflect is trying to replicate. So this will be similar to Speed and Angels campaign, the F-14 RAG campaign that he released earlier, where you'll practice the same tactics and techniques taught to the initial F4 crews, though. So this will be all about learning to take the Phantom to the edge of the envelope, as he states, and beyond. And there'll be air-to-ground portion of the training syllabus as well, which that sounds fantastic. I really like that it's an all-encompassing training environment for the F4 and not just something focused on air-to-air. I prefer air-to-ground missions, so I really like when that is there to enjoy in a campaign. So he also goes on to say that similar to the Zone 5 F-14 campaign, there will be significant mission randomization in what happens. So you can expect variety in what your wingman do and what your opponents do. And he goes on to say that some missions will have over 200 unique outcomes. To say I'm a novice in the mission editor probably undersells it, so I don't really fully understand what you can do, but having just played with it a little from time to time, I'm always just downright amazed at what some of these mission designers can do. So kudos to Reflected and all the other folks out there, that including the ones we previously mentioned here in today's show, for the work you do. So if you're interested, Reflected talks about this in more detail in his official Phantom campaign announcement video on his YouTube page. You can find that over youtube.com/@reflected-simulations, or find the link in the show notes. He also mentioned that he's been really busy this month, Reflected has. He's got F4E Phantom tutorials and free missions. So if you go while you're on his YouTube page, be sure to check it out. He's got tutorials walking you through the cold start, taxi, takeoff, landing, and shutdown procedures for the F4E Phantom. And if you already picked up the F4E, go ahead and check out some of the single missions he's developed, single player missions and instant action missions that are already available for free once you pick up the game. So he's got 2 missions built around the story from his Paradise Lost UH-1 Huey campaign. So think like Vietnam era, Marianas Map kind of thing. He has a mission for the Kiowa map called Red Dawn. And then if you have the Persian Gulf map, he's got an Iran-Iraq war mission. So all look really, really great over there. And then finally, he provided an update on the Kiowa campaign. Reflected was actually kind enough to leave a comment on the show's YouTube page, so thank you so much, Reflected, for dropping by, to respond to some previous coverage regarding the Arctic Thunder campaign he's working on with Baltic Dragon for the Kiowa map. So he just dropped by to mention that because their campaigns are set in the winter, that it's one of the main holdups right now for releasing those campaigns for the Kiowa map. So they're waiting on those textures to be developed by Orbix. Then once those are done, they'll be all set. He goes on to add that we wouldn't want to release a green shale or a green box art when these are actually snowy campaigns. So they kind of need to wait till those textures are in place before they can finish that. Plus there's thousands and thousands of voice lines they're recording, editing, and setting up. So he goes on to mention it'll definitely be worth the wait. And just as a reminder, since this is in collaboration with Baltic Dragon will be developing the F-18C campaign. Reflected will be developing the F-16C campaign, both of those coming for the Kiowa map. So a lot coming our way, or already there to be enjoyed from Reflected Simulation. And then finally, on the DCS campaign front, man, if you like single-player campaigns, we got you covered today for DCS. Ground Pounder Simulations is back. He announced the Falcon 14 campaign. So as a fan of the Harrier, this was thrilling to see. This is a new campaign for the AVAB set on the South Atlantic map. It's due for completion in the first half of 2025. So let me start off by saying he does note that the ongoing RAZBAM ED dispute is ongoing. You know, he's not oblivious to that. He goes on to say, quote, "I'm having faith that all will get resolved, so I'm just pushing through regardless. Fingers crossed." Amen to that, Ground Pounder. And I can't wait to see this. I do not have the South Atlantic map, but I'll be honest, this would be something that would kind of push me in the direction of picking it up. Because I've just been waiting for content to appear for it. It doesn't get flown on a lot with multiplayer, so if we can start to see some single-player content, it might be something to consider. If you're interested in this campaign, as the title implies, Falklands 14, this is set in 2014, involving a rejuvenated Argentinian military launching a surprise attack on the Falklands, swiftly capturing the islands and avenging their defeat in the 1982 Falklands War. So they have Chinese support. It says, emboldened by significant Chinese support, they dig in, prepare to defend against the inevitable British attempt to retake the islands. So the features of this campaign include detailed naval operations from HMS Invincible, including an interactive crew chief, fleet air traffic control, and departure and arrival procedures. So if you were interested in the original Falklands conflict, you like flying the Harrier, or you just enjoy the South Atlantic map, this is something really worthy of picking up. And on a personal note, it was really fun. During my cruise, it took us up to Scotland. Our ship actually pulled into port literally right next door to, I want to say it was the HMS Queen Elizabeth, the other ship in the Invincible class. So that shows my lack of knowledge about British naval assets. But it was really, really cool to see that carrier in person. As a former Navy Bubba, always great to see where some aviation units can be operating from while at sea. So Ground Pounder, this looks great. Shout out to you. If you want to see the link to the campaign announcement trailer on his YouTube page, you can find it over on youtube.com/@groundpoundersimulations 8317, or just click on the link in the show notes. Whew. That was a lot, right? Well, we're just getting things kicked off because we got to shift things over next to the hardware side of the house. Let's go ahead and get started with hardware news.
Flight controls. Flight controls.
If you can move it, toggle it, push it, or rotate it, hardware news is where we're going to talk about it. And kicking things off this week on the hardware side, we got Winwing announcing their Ursa Minor product line recently. So Winwing's unveiled a new entry-level series that looks to be competing directly with the VKB Gladiator lineup. So I think the NXT Evo, that's set up. So one, we're talking the step below their gunfighter, the premium end, and we're kind of like in that, I call mid-range. I think I'm going to call it mid-range, So I'm thinking products in the $100 to $200 lineup. So you get your base and your joystick grip all in one package for somewhere in that ballpark. So, and on that note, the first entry is exactly what I just talked about, the Ursa Minor Fighter Joystick. So this is looking to take on that NXT Evo from VKB head-to-head. They also teased some additional entries to include a left-handed grip, an airbus grip, so if you're into the civilian side, a left and right host sauce, like an omni throttle kind of thing if you're more into some of the space flight. So this current iteration of the Ursa Minor joystick is right-handed. So if you're looking to pick up a new joystick in your lineup or you're just getting started, this could be a very interesting option. So some of the features they highlight is it's plug and play, ready to go out of the box with no assembly required. That is in direct contrast to the VKB Gladiator, which I own several of those. On last, I don't even want to tell you guys how many I own. I think I own like 4 or 5 of them. Don't judge me. I got a lot of setups going on. Okay. But those come where the box and the grip is separate. So there is like a little minor out of the box assembly. It's very minor. Other things that I thought were interesting, they have some anti-slip pads for desktop use because the base is a little bit larger from some of the videos I've seen. It actually provides some really good friction and keeps it on the desk pretty nicely. There are pre-drilled holes, though, if you want to mount this in a cockpit. The base itself has 14 push buttons and 1 slider axis, so I guess that could serve on as a throttle of sorts if you were interested. The grip itself, though, is kind of where I think it sets it apart from some of its counterparts, specifically the NXT grip. It has 4 push buttons, 1 axis slew with a push, 4 four-way hats with push, and then 2 two-stage triggers. Kind of looks like it's going after more of the CM2 grip from Virpil, if you're familiar with that. Kind of offers that additional 2 buttons beyond what you would get with the NXT grip. That said, I got a picture of it in the show notes if you want to see all the buttons at your fingertips there. I think we're talking almost upwards of 50 in total. So really packs a pretty big punch. And why I say that, because the launch price for this thing is only $110 US. So they go on to showcase, a variety of prices depending on what area you're in. Now, they do go on to say the actual selling price might differ at the time due to exchange rates and whatnot, but I think it's starting to market itself like 110 to 115 in the US. I think I saw 113 pounds over in the UK or 105 euros. So really competitive price point. The only thing I'd say from this is following some of the commentary on Reddit, the gimbal design appears to be like a strikingly similar design to VKB's Gladiator. Even VKB, a rep, commented on it in the Hoggett subreddit. So the only reason I'm calling that out is I thought it was interesting the community's reaction to Flycon Technologies and how they copied Virpil's design and gimbal, and man, everybody lost it on them. And it's been pretty radio silent, at least from what I've seen on the Winwing front. So it's just kind of interesting how we kind of treat upcoming brands versus those that have already established themselves. But hey, if this is a price point you want to jump in at, it looks to be a pretty good piece of hardware. And why I say that is I've featured 2 videos, one from Austringer over at Falcon's Ledge on YouTube, also one of the new moderators on the HOTAS Discord and subreddit. So shout out to you, Austringer. There, he's got a great look where he deep dives into what the Ursa Minor looks like. And then Mish over at WatchMish, that's MYSH over on YouTube. He's got another great video of it. Some of the takeaways from these 2 videos, I really encourage you to go check out their actual reviews, but some of the positives they highlight is kind of what we already talked about. You're getting a lot of functionality at a really competitive price here. It's very customizable in terms of that level of control. You got like the VKB Gladiator line, so you can dig into the gimbal. You can make changes to the springs. You can make changes to that tension. You can maybe lock out an axis if you want to do something different. The larger footprint makes it perfect for desktop use. So really competitive elements there. The only con that was highlighted, and both Mish and Austrian mentioned this, is that the toggle switches appear to be on the mushier side. And that immediately stood out to me, as I'm very particular about that, the tactile feel of my inputs. So if you're someone like me, that's just something to keep in mind. As an owner of the VKB Gladiator lineup, I really enjoy the toggle switches and hats utilized, or I should say the not toggle switches, there are not really any toggles on these, but the button presses and the hat switches, I should be saying, on these grips. So VKB does a great job. Theirs have a great feel to them. So just something to keep in mind now with the Winwing. At this price point, though, I really think you're going to be challenged to be disappointed no matter really how mushy they are. That's a lot you're getting at that price. So regardless, it's great to see another entry at this price point. I like to see the hardware developers continuing to iterate. So keep an eye on that, or look into it more if that's something you're interested in and making addition to your flight sim setup. Continuing with hardware news, we got a more community-focused development. This is FlightForge. So FlightForge we featured on the show before. They have created they've previously created an A10 UFC or upfront controller and an F16 ICP. They had in development a UFC for the F-15E, which was looking really, really good. Unfortunately, they posted a development on the Hoggett subreddit recently, which said they're here with a bittersweet update because of the lack of support and the ongoing dispute between RAZBAM and Eagle Dynamics. They stated that they have basically put the development of the F-15 Strike Eagle UFC on pause. Now, they do mention if the module should again receive support in the future, they'll be ready with the UFC at that time. In light of this development, in light of the pause of the development of the F-15 UFC, they've created a 10% discount code, which is Tombstone. So that's TOMBSTONE. That code is valid through June 15th and will get you 10% off on either of the products available on their store. And they go on to highlight that any order will now include a remove before flight keychain as a special thank you. So you can find their website over on flight-forge.com. You can also find them on Etsy. One thing I did think was a fun little shout out is one person in the Hoggett subreddit posted, hey, you should utilize the F-15E design as a base for a hybrid UFC, that would work for a variety of aircraft. And FlightForge responded with a shh. So, hey, I'm hopeful. Maybe that means we're going to give it something different. But yeah, this was really disappointing to see. The early pictures of what they had in development looked really great. But that said, you can still find the A10 UFC for $85 US and the F-16 ICP for $95 US, and that's before the 10% off Tombstone code. So get on that. You got about a week to make use of that. And then finally, a new entry in the hardware news side. I love bringing you guys new hardware. So this is really great, something I hadn't discovered till earlier this week. A Slug Mouse. So this is for the VR pilots out there. Slug Mouse. This is a point control alternative. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what point control is, it's a very popular piece of hardware that essentially allows you to replicate mouse clicks and mouse functionality with a little device that sits on your index fingers. The downside to point control is it's extremely popular, and it's, as a community developed product only being developed by one person, it takes a long time to make those. So the waiting list for this thing is insane. I think it's like 2 years. I don't even fly in VR, and I got on the wait list for point control a year ago because I was like, well, heck, why not? I mean, I might be interested in VR in like 2027, so I might as well get on the wait list for this thing now. Well, enter Slug Mouse, being developed by Slughead. I found this over on the Eagle Dynamics forums, link in the show notes as always. So what is Slug Mouse? Well, as I mentioned, kind of like point control, Slug Mouse is a wireless finger-mounted mouse button emulator. So you use this along your VR headset, and you can essentially convert hand movements to mouse pointer control. So think like just extend your hand, point to where you want to, and then like right along your index finger, use your thumb to generate a mouse click or a mouse movement. So you can now interact directly with cockpit switches, dials, levers, buttons, knobs, just by pointing your hand and then moving it left, right, or scrolling up, scrolling down. It says the Slug Mouse also supports a middle mouse button, and it is plug and play. So, or as it says, it's rather pair and play, because this thing is connecting via Bluetooth, as I previously mentioned there, or at least I think I mentioned. So yeah, connects via Bluetooth. There's no calibration, and the battery lasts for several days with recharging taking less than an hour. The battery status is provided on your Bluetooth device screen in Windows. So all told, pretty impressive package. I was really surprised to see this in a good way. I just thought this was an awesome addition to see someone else getting into this market and filling this need. So bottom line, how much does this cost? Well, if you're interested, you get a pair of the slug mice, as they're called, for 135 pounds plus shipping. So shipping is available to most countries. I pulled out a couple shipping examples for you guys. So shipping in the UK is about 560 pounds. So additional, let's call it 6 pounds, which brings you up to about 141 pounds total. In the EU to France, for example, it'd be an additional 13 euros. In the US, shipping would be about $21. So I think if I did my math right, in the US, you're looking at about 160 maybe for this all told. But still, you get both slug mice, so left and right hand. How do you order one if you're interested? So reach out to Slughead on the Eagle Dynamics forums. You send him a private message with the ring size of your left and right index fingers in millimeters, and then your email address. He says, be sure to use a ring gauge to measure your ring size. He goes, using tape string will not give an accurate size and will leave you disappointed. So just something to keep it in mind. He also recommends just going to a jeweler and measuring professionally. Agreed. If you're going to spend this money, make sure you get it right. And just like I said, reach out over private message, put your order in. He says PayPal is preferred, although other methods can be discussed when you order. And he goes on to mention there is a DIY option. The slug mouse is based on a design by Rofgaj78. So I think that was how he said it over on GitHub. But he goes on to mention this is a complete re-engineer in terms of hardware and software from the ground up. But if you want to build your own, you can find the details on Rofgaj's GitHub page and do that there. He's also got a video. He being a Slughead here has a video walking you through what the slug mouse actually looks like in action over on his YouTube page. Check it out. I've also got some screenshots in the show notes of what this thing looks like, including the functionality that's available for you. As I mentioned, you can replicate scrolling up, scrolling down, left click, right click, back button, and you can do it on both your left and right hands. I gotta be honest, I actually think this would be really cool to use even without VR. Am I weird? Does that, I don't know. I'm thinking about that. If you didn't want to have a mouse in your cockpit, could you just strap one of these to both your index fingers and boom, you're ready to go? I don't know. This is where the friends I fly with tell me, no, Stu Manji, you have enough hardware. You do not need this in your life. Or I suppose that's what my wife should do as well. But okay. Anyway, either way, if you're interested, check out the slug mice over there on the Eagle Dynamics forums. Shout out to you, Slughead. This looks like a great addition to the hardware world for flight simming. All right, with that wrapped up, let's transition to the portion of the show where we highlight the work of people just like you, the community.
Really not track it, what they're doing exactly.
So the community news is where we cover the latest ongoings of the community, from campaigns and mods to servers, software, and everything in between. Kicking things off this week, as I mentioned up front in the flyby, we got the Flight Sim Expo revealing the floor plan this week. So the show is going down in just 2 weeks. I cannot believe we're that close already. So in Las Vegas at the Rio, June 21st through the 23rd will be the 2024 Flight Sim Expo. If you don't know what this is, you have not heard me talk about it, I encourage you to go check it out over at flightsimexpo.com. We are an official supporter of the Flight Simulation Expo, a partner, if you will, so helping spread the word. I will be watching virtually this year, but you can bet we will cover the latest ongoings at the show. There's going to be a lot to cover, including the co-founder of the show, Phil Coyle, just announcing earlier this week that this year's show will see new exhibitors and more than 15 announcements on Friday when the show kicks off, as well as record attendance. So it looks like it's going to be a great time. Some of the military flight sim related teams that are going to be in attendance on the show floor are going to be Thrustmaster, which is in booth 506, Purple in booth 510, Combat Pilot, the upcoming World War II sim in development by Jason Williams and the team, is booth 416. Winwing is booth 420. Shout out to D Drake 1984, the moderator for the HOTAS Reddit and Discord server. He will be there with Winwing in booth 420, so get in touch with him. He also did a great write-up on what you can expect at the show, and we'll be covering it in person, so you can follow that along on his blog, which I've linked to in the show notes. SimFab will be over at the VR Experience Center, so if you want to see what they got in terms of some hardware for your cockpit. So cockpit and chair setup, they'll be over there. And then Dogfight Dynamics, another cockpit-focused developer, will be over in booth 236. Give a special shout out to them because Tech Adept from Tech Creations will be there as well. He'll be hanging out in booth 236. So if you're interested in some military flight simulation or hardware, they're a great one to keep an eye on. And then keep your eyes out for all the other confirmed members of the military flight simulation community that will be there, including folks from Hella Simmer. At Aviation Plus is going to be there. I already mentioned D-Drake's going to be there. Bogey Dope, who we mentioned in the show, is going to be there. And I'm sure I'm missing loads of others. If you're going to be there, let me know. Give me a shout out. I'd love to hear from you guys about what your experience is like once you get to the show, what it's like on the show floor, and what you think about the show. I'm really hoping the military flight simulation portion of the show continues to develop in as we go forward into next year and the year after. I think this has already been a great development this year with the folks we do have going. I love to see it, and I really, really hope this is a show we can attend next year. But that said, again, I'll be attending virtually. Can't wait to get see what's going down in just 2 weeks. And if you're on the fence, I included a nice little article from FS Elite over on their website, fselite.net. They got 10 reasons to visit the Flight Sim Expo this June over in Las Vegas. So if you need your arm twisted into going into Las Vegas, go ahead and check it out. All right, shifting things over. We got Kneeboard.live, the public launch of Kneeboard.live. So we previously covered this on episode 11. This is the community-generated interactive checklist tool developed by Amadeus for use with any flight sim, and it's now live and ready for you to use. So they put together an example checklist for the DCS F-14, which I got linked in the show notes. The biggest thing here is this is a checklist you can bring up on a second monitor, bring it up on an iPad, pull up community-generated checklists. There's already a bunch there to look through, or you can make your own as well. But then as you're going through the checklist, boom, you can click on each step of the checklist and it will actually line through it. Makes it really, really nice to track where you are if you get distracted like I do all the time. As I mentioned, you can check out Amadeus. He's got a YouTube page at Amadeus Demarzi 2. I got the link to the show notes where he walks through a great video of what the current state of the Kneeboard.live system looks like on public launch. If you're interested in learning more, following the development, or you want to contribute some checklists and share those with the community, join the official Discord server. Amadeus is a great guy to chat with. He's very receptive to feedback and always looking to make this tool better for the community. So this is one to keep an eye on. So go check it out. All right, give a shout out to another podcast over there, are doing great things in the community. We got Air Combat Sim Podcast debuted an episode recently, and they interviewed friend of the show, Sedlow. So Rob interviewed Sim Sedlow. You can find his YouTube page over at Sedlow. I'm sure you've heard me mention him a ton of times on the show. Sedlow is a great mission editor, mission campaign developer, mission developer, and tutorial maker, content creator, just so many great things for the community. This episode of the podcast really delved into Sedlow's passion for aviation, talked about how he got started in DCS, military flight simulations, and his journey through mission making and all things DCS. So this is a great episode of the podcast. The Air Combat Sim Podcast is always a good listen. You can hear them over at Authentic-Media on YouTube, or you can find their episodes wherever you get your podcast. So be sure to check out this episode. It's great. And Sedlow, shout out to you. Thank you for participating. It was great to hear more and learn more about you as well. Okay, on the IL-2 Great Battles front, we got a free campaign. I love the words free, and I love new campaigns. So this is the Little Brother campaign for the IAR-80 aircraft. So this is, before I get started, shout out to Shamrock from the Stormbirds.blog for bringing this to my attention. This is a campaign developed by Sand Markin. You can find a link to the forum post over on the IL-2 Stormbird forums here in the show notes. This is a 10-mission campaign, as I mentioned, for IL-2's newest collector plane. So if you picked up this collector plane, you own Battle of Kuban. That's where this is going down. This is 10 free missions for you to enjoy. This takes place from May to July 1943, and you get to fly for the Royal Romanian Aeronautics Group. So as a member of the 4th Fighter Group following the Battle of Stalingrad, the 49th Squadron was stood up with the IAR-80C and sent to the Eastern Front, where Axis forces are retreating toward the Crimean Peninsula, being pushed away by the mighty Red Army. So you can find the file over on the Google Drive. You just download it, extract it, put it in your data folder, and boom, you're good to go. So I got a couple screenshots of what this looks like. The briefing is impressive. It looks like a very high quality campaign. And again, free. 10 missions for you to enjoy. So check it out. That's the Little Brother campaign for IL-2 Great Battles. All right, over on the BMS front, we got Fiscus is back. So if you needed another tutorial in your life for Falcon BMS, the new update to 4.3, 7.4, I think I got it right, is calling your name. You want to get back into it. He's got an air-to-ground gun and bombing tutorial campaign. So this walks you through the SMS page, the air-to-ground gun and manual bombing modes, as well as low-altitude drogue delivery. I should say he mentions low-altitude drogue delivery is not covered. As to my understanding, it isn't totally implemented. So this is going to focus on some of the other manual bombing modes, such as CCRP, CCIP, the dive toss using the joint helmet mounted, blah, blah, blah. I can't ever remember that. So the JHMCS, and then finally we got manual mode. So covering a lot of ways to employ some of your manual bombing methods. You can find his YouTube page over at Fiscus Fighties. Always puts together some great tutorials. So thanks, Fiscus, for another great addition to your lineup. While you're on the BMS front looking to learn more, who else are you going to turn to? That's right. Aviation Plus is back. The man, the myth, the legend. He's back covering a few other important things this week, such as the Link 16 setup that just got added, which means he's going to remind you again how to do the data cartridge click dance to get things like threat circles, the doghouse, and most importantly, the click dance, right? So he'll cover all those things, get you set up. He's got a video over on his YouTube page. Again, you can find him on youtube.com/@aviationplus. All right, shifting over to the DCS side of the house. We've already given a couple shout-outs on this week's episode, but Stormbirds, while it's gone, put together a great community question and answer session with Baltic Dragon. So the infamous, if you will, DCS campaign developer Baltic Dragon, put out so many great campaigns. Actually, I guess I should use the word prolific, right? Rather than infamous. That probably sounds like negative in some way. No, Baltic Dragon does great things for the community, and the campaigns are a major part of what he does. And kudos to him and Shamrock for putting this together. They covered a lot of ground, but some of the big topics they covered is how Baltic got started with combat flight sims, how he got into making campaigns, where he gets the inspiration for campaigns, talking a little bit about his collaboration with Reflected on the Cola campaigns we've already talked about, and then some of his future campaign plans. So head on over to the Stormbirds.blog, give the QA a read, and subscribe to Shamrock's mailing list to let him know that you heard about us on the Hangar Bay podcast and that you love what he does over there. Also on the Baltic Dragon news front, he shared some access with Shamrock to the upcoming Gamblers campaign. So that's the F-16 campaign that will be on the Syria map. So Shamrock got some hands-on time with the first two missions, and you can read about it on his latest flight journal over there and his adventures. If you haven't read Shamrock's flight journals, I think they're some of the best work he does. It's just fantastic. You really feel like you were in the aircraft with him as he recounts his adventures. And this one's particularly interesting if you're excited about what Baltic Dragon's got coming your way for the upcoming F-16C campaign. And if you want to know more about the Gamblers campaign, there is a Gamblers campaign introduction on Baltic Dragon's YouTube page. So head on over there. You can learn more about that and see what awaits you. I think that campaign is supposed to release later this month. So, think about all the things we've got coming already. We got the Gamblers campaign. We got the update to the Sinai map, the Chinook. We got Afghanistan. On top of everything else we had, it is ridiculous right now, all the stuff going on with DCS. All right, well, it keeps me busy. So, okay, other updates to DCS from the community. We got Squeaky. Squeaky is back with the training day update, and there has been all the things I just listed for you. Well, you got people like Squeaky who've got to make all the updates to everything they've already released. So he updated his training day missions that are available on the DCS user file page to include the F4E Phantom, the OH-58, as well as the Cola map. He does plan to add support for the CH-47 and possibly the Afghanistan map upon release. But then he mentions he's going to delay all updates after that, as he's going to rework all of his missions from the ground up. And I can only imagine how much work that will take. But shout out to Squeaky. We've talked about his training day missions before. If you're not familiar with them, there's a variety of ranges for you to practice on. You can have hot and cold spawns for every flyable aircraft in the game. Extras include tankers and AWACS, ambient units to make it feel like their world is being lived in and it's not so lifeless. And a reminder, you can find all of these on the DCS user page, user files page, which is linked in the show notes. So go check it out. Squeaky, thank you for everything you do. On the mod front, I got something that came across my radar. It's kind of unique. I want to share it with you guys. It's the Bayraktar TB2 mod for DCS. So what is this? Well, it's a Turkish medium altitude, long endurance, unmanned combat aerial vehicle capable of remote control or autonomous flight ops. You might be thinking like, why am I featuring a drone mod for DCS? Well, the cool thing is you could actually fly this like you're in the drone ground station. So imagine you're in the Connex box, you're in that ground station, and you're just flying your drone around. I just thought it was such a cool addition to the game, and I wanted to feature it. I want to shout out to this, though, before I mention it any further. It does appear to break integrity check per the comments on the DCS user file page, so use at your own risk. You can find the link in the show notes there, but if you fly on a lot of more public servers, this might not be something you want active all the time. But Spinos Simulations on YouTube over at Spinos, S-P-I-N-O-S Simulations, put together a great little video recapping some of the functionality. So go over, check out his video, see if that's something you're interested in it, and if you are, go download it and enjoy that new addition to the game. Always amazing what some of the community are coming out with. It's really pretty incredible. Speaking of other additions to DCS, they're just coming left and right. You go away for a month, it's amazing how much we miss. We got an update to DCS Web Viewer. So this is the 3D web mission editor for DCS. We talked about in the show before. It's received updates for the Cola map. And the coolest feature is you can now browse this web viewer in-game if you have the F4E Phantom. Because of the way Heatblur has set up their Kneeboard, you can actually view the web viewer in-game, which means you can actually see the route of your current aircraft on one of those world map views. So you can actually have map interactions such as drawing or adding notes to the embedded web map that the DCS web viewer enables right on your F4E Kneeboard. If you don't fly the F4, you can also replicate some of this functionality with the Open Kneeboard mod. I've linked to that in the show notes. That provides support as well for viewing the DCS web viewer. It's really, really cool. Unfortunately, Open Kneeboard does not support that direct interaction with drawing and adding notes. You'd have to Alt-Tab if you want to do that, but you can still only see the map. And what am I talking about here? If you're not familiar with DCS Web Editor, I've got a link in the show notes, but there's a video as well on the DCS Web Editor YouTube page at DCS-Web-Editor. We can actually see what I'm talking about here. It looks fantastic in action. And if you have a VR pilot, you get the same functionality as well. You can see it in VR. It's just really, really cool seeing your aircraft in real time moving along this map on your Kneeboard. So really cool functionality being added lately to the game. Continuing on the DCS F4E front, I got two pieces of info I want to share with you real quick. For those of you who did pick up the Phantom, you may already have seen this, but I want to do my due diligence to share it with you. The first is, if you're like me, and the best part of the F4E Phantom is you want to do those Wild Weasel missions, you want to know how to use the AGM-45 Shrike. Well, I've got a guide for you created by HB Painter over on the Eagle Dynamics forum. He put together a great forum post over there. It's a very detailed guide to how to use the Shrike. And then to go along with that, there's a Kneeboard put together by Rick130, which is a detailed Kneeboard where he depicts which Shrike Seekers track which SAMs and which ones have tone and which ones do not. And he walks you through how to use these missiles in action. So he spent together a lot of time firing every Shrike Seeker at every Red Force SAM site in DCS, which props to you. So he set up a mission that spawned in an invincible F4E about 9 miles from the site, 14,000 feet, and boom, just kept going at each and every one of them. So put all that data together in a nice Kneeboard, and it looks fantastic. You can find that on the DCS user file page. I got a picture of what that looks like in the show notes. And man, community members coming up with stuff like this is just so damn inspiring. So it's great to see. So kudos to both of you, Rick130 and HB Painter. Great stuff. Also on the F4E front, the infamous Chuck is back. That's right, Chuck from Chuck Guides. I had to laugh at this. He goes, I put together a quick guide on the F4E. I know it's not much. It just walks you through the startup, taxi, takeoff, and landing procedures. Take a guess at how many pages Chuck's quick guide is. 75. My man does not understand the word chill. It's impressive. So 75-page quick guide. How you get access to it, so you got to go visit Chuck's Patreon. But hey, it's free. You do not have to pay the man, even though you should. Just throw him $1 a month for all the hard work he's doing for you. But if you don't want to, it's okay. As long as you log in, create a free account, you too can download Chuck's 75-page quick guide. I love it. And then finally, Would we be complete in talking about great new content for DCS if we didn't mention Sedlo one more time? That's right, Sedlo's back. We're in the F4E Phantom with Sedlo's BFM, BVR, and air-to-ground weapons trainer. So we've talked about this great mission that Sedlo put together on episode 9 of the show a couple weeks ago, probably a couple months ago at this point. But he walks you through in his latest YouTube video how to use this mission in combination with active pause featured DCS to learn how to use the weapon systems of the F4E. It's just a great way to do it. So go check out this mission on the DCS user file page. I got it linked there. Then go over, follow Sedlo on YouTube at Sedlo, Sedlo. He's got a video that showcases just how you can use that mission to learn the F4E's feature. Or I should say the F4E weapons functionality. He also put together a great mission for the F4E. So just like Reflected, a lot of the content creators reached out to by Heatboard to create missions before they released their aircraft so that when they launched, they had a lot of content, which Heatboard, man, you just continue to set the bar on how to release an aircraft. But that said, Sedlo created the Gulf Guardian mission. So if you have the Persian Gulf map, you will need to have that to play this mission. This mission will be available for you once you purchase the F4E. The Gulf Guardian mission is inspired by the events in the Persian Gulf that occurred in the 1980s. After a U.S. Navy warship is hit by a wayward missile, the president deploys the 68th Tactical Fighter Squadron to the region in an attempt to calm the tensions. So this mission is filled with realistic voiceovers, immersive ATC, and AWACS tasking. Sedlo, this is great, man. Thanks for helping to get the F4E release off to such a good start. Other folks who are helping lately in the DCS community include Gold Wolf, who continues to deliver with great documentation. So we've referenced the DCS reference guide before. We're up to version 33, which is incredible. So this is a mini kneeboard of sorts. It's a pocket guide, if you will, that includes air-to-air weapons, air-to-ground weapons, RWR symbology, all of the like. So if you want a quick reference guide of like what can your aircraft take, what weapons can you employ on what pylons, what does the RWR symbology look like in your aircraft, for every aircraft in DCS, Gold Wolf has you covered, man. And he's got the addition of the F4E in the latest version, version 33. So go check that out. Also found on the DCS user file page and linked to in the show notes. And then finally, let's catch our breath. The last community update for the week is a public service announcement. So you might all laugh and think, duh, where have you been, Sumanji? This has been known forever. If you are someone like me who likes to get coordinates on the F10 map and you have to constantly click the F10 map, and then if you don't write them down, you're like, oh crap, what was that degrees, minutes, seconds, or what format was that in? Rest your weary head. You don't have to worry about that anymore, because credit to user No Lingonary 6819. It just rolls off the tongue. No Lingonary 6819 over on the Hoggett subreddit, who came up with the public service announcement that when you are not in the mission editor, you can use the left mouse button to bring up coordinate info. So it stays open when the F10 map is closed. So recap, you are looking at coordinates, hit left MB, bring up the coordinate info. When you close the F10 map, this little box stays open. It's going to tell you the coordinates in lat long standard, precise, the lat long decimal, the MGRS grid information, the altitude. All of that will still be visible on the screen. It's amazing. I don't know where this has been or how long it's been in the game, but my goodness. So an example here, he's got highlighting, he's got his cursor over the King Hussein Air Base. In game, clicks left mouse button, boom, exits F10 map. It's still there. It's amazing. Check it out. Try it in game. And shout out to community members for sharing content like this. This is the goods. Thank you for sharing it with us. And now I've shared it with you. Okay, let's shift things on over to the user content of the week.
They blew themselves up. They just blew themselves up.
It's tough to follow public service announcements like that, but we're going to try with the user content of the week. And sometimes it's a mission, sometimes it's a tutorial, sometimes it's just an interesting topic of conversation here in the content of the week. And this week for DCS, we've got something called Flight Deck, a simple but smart launcher for DCS coming to us developed by user Rinzler, RINZLLER1, who posted this again on the Hoggett subreddit. We're featuring a lot of Hoggett stuff this week. This smart launcher aims to streamline your DCS management experience. So if you're like me, I use something called the DCS Updater GUI, which was developed by Skatezilla. That's like a nice little software utility that helps you manage, update, repair, clean, launch DCS. It's just like a really nice piece of software. You can find it. I've linked to it on the DCS user on the DCS forums. Well, Flight Deck's a little different. Flight Deck's kind of like a snazzy little GUI that's going to add some additional functionality to make managing DCS a little easier for you. So it allows you to easily keep DCS updated, change graphical settings without actually going in game. But then one of the coolest features I liked was it allows you to easily organize and access your kneeboards. And again, you do all of this from this little smart launcher. So then the kneeboard functionality, what am I talking about here? Well, it's going to auto detect your installed aircraft and allow you to drag and drop your kneeboards from places like Discord into the proper locations. You can remove, reorganize them all on the fly. And you can do that right in this little piece of software. DCS updates. It's going to keep itself and DCS updated. Whenever there's an update for either one, it will be prompting you to download it, so you don't have to launch the game if you want to run the updater. DCS settings. You can change any setting that would have required a restart had it been changed inside of DCS. And to this, I say amen. So graphics settings, VR settings, anything like that, boom, you can edit them right from the launcher here. And then finally, this is all done in a nice user-friendly interface. It's intuitive, easy to navigate, and they say a smooth experience of setup to advanced keyboard and setting usage. So if you're looking for something like this, I got some screenshots in the show notes. It's very high quality, looks really, really nice. And if you're interested, go check it out on the Flight Deck GitHub repository. They got an FAQ over there that will answer any questions you have. Then just follow their installation instructions, and boom, you'll be set up. And again, that's called Flight Deck. Wonderful, wonderful little piece of software. And that's your user content of the week. Okay, let's kick it over to the Simpit Spotlight now.
You don't see any big stream of flames or smoke coming out, do you?
All right, we've reached that time of the show where it's time for my favorite segment, where we highlight a community member's personal Simpit setup, no matter how simple or complex, to celebrate the joy of flying from home. And as this is a first on this show, now granted it's only 16 episodes, but we have a two-time member of the Simpit Spotlight. That's right, Hunchy is back. If Hunchy hears this, he's probably laughing because he knows I'm a big fan. But Hunchy, I featured him at the end of March on episode 10. And at the time, he mentioned, hey, I got a big update coming your way, or not my way. I'd like to think it's my way. Maybe, you know what? In fact, maybe it was coming my way. I've spawned this great addition for all of us. Sorry, I'm getting punchy. It's been a long show. But no, he shared this with the community as a whole, a nice update on the new status of his cockpit circa May 2024. And because of that, he is the first two-time recipient of the Simpit Spotlight. He provides this new update, and he hints that he's up to over 500 inputs. I mean, that's insane. 500 buttons, toggle switches, whatever the case may be. And he reminded in the comments on the Hoggett post where he did all this that this is a great example of just starting small and building slowly over time as you identify what changes you want to make to your cockpit. I wish I could say I always follow the same advice. I tend to try to do it all at once, and then I get overwhelmed and it slows me down. But he started with a simple Cytec X55, and to see where he's at today is just remarkable. He's got tons of panels. All of these are homemade 3D printed designs. His monitor is a 42-inch OLED TV. He's currently rocking a Virpil CM3 throttle. On the left there, he's got a left-hand gunfighter base with the SCG grip. He's got a gunfighter base center stick mounting the VKB MCG Ultimate grip. And then he's got at least 2 Stream Decks, 2 Thrustmaster Cougar MFDs, and just tons of custom toggle switches and buttons on his 3D printed panels. The whole setup looks fantastic. I mean, I was already a huge fan, and then this update just takes it to the next level. So if you missed his content before on a previous episode, you can find Hunchy over on YouTube at Hunchy_the_Sim_Gamer. I've got the latest video as well as a slew of pictures he shared with the community as well on the show notes. Go scroll down, find the Simpit Spotlight, and you too can enjoy everything that Hunchy's put together. It's just, I love seeing people who put this much time and effort and love into their Simpits and then share them with community members for other inspiration. Hunchy is one of the main reasons I even kind of created this segment of the show. Stuff like this has always just been a huge thrill for me to cover, and I get so much enjoyment out of it and seeing things I want to do with my own spotlight. And so it's great to see another edition here. So Hunchy, kudos to you. The setup continues to look great. Enjoy your second award. I'm sure if you continue to update us, you'll have number 3 and 4 later on down the line. That said, let's end things with the listener feedback portion of the show.
612, departure radio check.
So no feedback per se, but if there is any news, community content, or a Simpit spot setup that you would like to see covered, just a reminder that you can always get in touch with the show via email. That's going to be feedback@thehangarbaypod.com, or reach out to me on social media at the Hangar Bay Pod on Twitter or on Instagram or on YouTube. I honestly, when you just reply with YouTube comments, that's one of the easiest ways to get in touch. I'm always active over there, and I love to hear from you. Tell me what you like, what you don't like about the show, what content you want me to feature. If there's something I've missed, please let me know. I'm all about celebrating what the community is doing, and I can't do that unless help me know what's going on. So help me shine a light on the great things going on each and every week. And without further ado, that concludes another episode of the Hangar Bay. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I know it was a long one, but man, it's just great to be back doing the show, talking to you, and I can't wait for what we have next weekend, because we'll be back like we always are around here to get it just squared away with all the latest military flight simulation and hardware news. And until then, think about what you put out into the community and make it a better place. Fly safe, everyone.
Roger that. Let's go down low on the deck. Unload 500 knots. Let's get out of here.
The missile knows where it is at all times. Oh, I'm sorry. What I meant to say is that you can find the video show on YouTube or on Spotify at the Hangar Bay Pod. The audio show is available on all major podcast providers. You can contact the show via email, feedback@thehangarbaypod.com, or on Instagram and Twitter at the Hangar Bay Pod. Show notes and links to everything discussed on this week's show are available at thehangarbaypod.com.
It takes a lot more than just fancy flying.